So great to be in the house of the Lord today.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So, I'm going to be in 2 Corinthians, that's New Testament, chapter 4, verses 7 through 10, and chapter 12, verses 6 through 10. That's my plan. You have your Bibles? This is my Bible.
This is my Bible.
I am what it says I am.
I am what it says I am.
I have what it says I have.
I have what it says I have.
I can do what it says I can do.
I can do what it says I can do.
Today I'll be taught the word of the Lord.
Today I'll be taught the word of the Lord.
Boldly I confess.
Boldly I confess.
My mind is alert.
My mind is alert.
My heart is receptive.
My heart is receptive.
And I'll never be the same.
I'll never be the same.
I'm about to receive
I'm about to receive
the incorruptible,
the incorruptible,
the indestructible,
the indestructible,
the indescribable,
the indescribable,
the ever-living seed of the word of the Lord.
the ever-living seed of the word
And
of
I
the
will
Lord.
never be the same.
I will never be the same.
Amen, amen. Well, welcome to all those of you out there in cyberspace. Actually, you're not in cyberspace, you're in your house. Last week I told you ladies probably lighten up on the curvers. I kind of like when I'm thinking of looking at you out there, I'm thinking you're already ready for church and you have your makeup on and all that, you know. And, although you probably have a nice cup of coffee. Some of you are drinking orange juice. But anyway, we're glad you're here. We're glad you joined us today. And it's an opportunity for us to look into the Word of the Lord this morning. And we're going to talk about jars of clay. Because when you listen about what jars of clay are, they're very fragile. And yet, unless they're run through a kiln, they'll break easily. And even after they're fired, if you're not careful with them, they can break. And I thought about, you know, having pastored a church for a long time, I found out that the more mature folks get, the more fragile they get.
My Lord.
So instead of jumping out of a truck, we'll use a step stool. Climbing into a trailer, might use a step stool. I just climb up on the back tire and flip over in the bed of the truck or whatever, but that's a whole different story. Anyway, it's just an interesting thing. I was thinking, before I read the scripture, I heard about this old couple that were sitting by the fireside. He looked over at her. That was good, don't you think? And he had a romantic thought. And he said this to her. Honey, after 50 years, I've found that you're tried and true. His wife's hearing wasn't very good. She said, what? He said, after 50 years, I found you're tried and true. She says, I'm tired of you too. That wasn't all right. So there was this elderly man, I'm going to help the man too, who was hard of hearing, but he had a hard of hearing wife. So he went to his doctor, this one was traveling, they were traveling from Memphis to Nashville, as I recall the story. And they were going along fine until they had car trouble. And so he pulled over to a gas station. I hate gas stations to get your car fixed, but anyway. Pulls up to a gas station. The mechanic struck up a conversation with the old man. He said, where are you headed? Nashville, replied the old man. What did he say? What did he say? The impatient, virtually deaf wife said. He asked where we were going, and I told him Nashville. Where are you coming from? The mechanic said. Memphis, the old man said. What did he say? What did he say? She said again. He asked if we were from where we were from, and I told him Memphis. Memphis, sighed the mechanic. I once knew an old lady from Memphis. She was the meanest, rudest, ugliest old bag that there ever was. She's the reason I live in Nashville. What did he say? She said. What did he say? She said. The old man said, I think he knows your sister. It ain't over yet. See, sometimes we don't realize that we might be the ones with the hearing problem, because my wife tells me that all the time. Why do you have the radio so loud? So this middle-aged man was distraught over his wife. His wife was stubborn, and she refused to admit that she had a hearing problem. One day, while he was getting his physical, he said to his family doctor, he said, how can I convince my wife that she has a hearing problem? And the doctor said, well, it's easy. So when you get home, just to confirm the problem, open the front door, and when you open the front door, ask your wife, what's for dinner, honey? And the doctor said if she doesn't answer, move closer to the kitchen, repeat it again. None of you guys have done this, have you? And if she still doesn't answer, move right up to her ear and say, what's for dinner, honey? And in this way, the doctor said, she'll have to admit she's got a hearing problem. So he raced home with joy. He was excited. He opens the front door. What's for dinner, honey? There's no reply. He moves closer to the kitchen, gets in the living room. What's for dinner, honey? No reply. He looked into the kitchen, and sure enough, there she was. So he tiptoed over to her and whispered in her ear, what's for dinner, honey? She said, for the 4th time, I said, we're having spaghetti. Right. By the way, online, I don't usually tell 3 jokes in a row, but they were just too good not to share with you. Yeah. And they're not copyrighted. They're probably stolen from somebody else, so you're welcome to use them if they're worthy of retelling. We're jars of clay, folks. And we thrive out of weakness. So let me take you to, first of all, 2 Corinthians. And we're going to dance on chapter 4 and look at it a little bit. And then we're going to go to chapter 12, same passage, a little bit further down the line. And we're going to start on verse 7, because Paul is writing to the church at Corinth here. He said, listen to this. He says, but we have a treasure, this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellence of the power of God may be of God and not of us. Don't you like that? Remember, vessels of clay, fragile. We're hard pressed on every side, yet not crushed. We're perplexed, but not in despair. We're persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus, and that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our own body. Don't you like that? Jars of clay. And then if you want to turn over to the 12th chapter, and we'll start there at verse 6. Paul said, for though I might desire to boast, I will not be a fool, for I will speak the truth, but I refrain lest anyone think of me above what he sees me to be or hears from me. And lest I should be exalted. Now remember, this guy had all kinds of languages. He was educated. He would have a multitude of doctorate degrees if he were here today. Lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations. A thorn in the flesh was given to me. A messenger of Satan buffeted me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times, that it might depart from me. And here's what he said. This write down. My grace is sufficient for you. Hallelujah. My strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in the infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, in persecution, in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I'm weak, then I'm strong. Amen. Don't you like that? Jars of clay. Jars of clay who thrive out of weakness, out of fragileness. We're jars of treasure, though. Understand this. We're jars of treasure because Christ is seen through us. Amen. Jars of caring, to whom and through God comforts and cares. Have you ever thought about God as using you as an instrument to make a difference in a broken world? He's using you. Jars of generosity, to whom and through whom God gives. And I know from this group, you give beyond what you have. And that's awesome. But I like this one. Jars of strength, to whom and through whom God is strong. He said, I'll be with you. I'll never leave you. I'll strengthen you. I'll guide you. I'll correct you. I'll do those things you need. I'm here for you. Don't you like that? Amen. Y'all remember Mary Lou Retton? Some of the young kids don't. She was a gymnast, and she at the time the story was written, she was like 40 years old. But she was inducted in the Olympic Hall of Fame in 1985. She was born with hip dysplasia. Listen to this. Had a hip replacement as a child.
Wow.
And yet in the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, California, she edged out her opponents by scoring a perfect 10s in the 4 exercises. I remember watching it. And then vaulted to win the Olympic gold for the best all-around competition in gymnastics. That was Mary Lou, a little bitty short girl. She's 40 years old. I don't know how old she is, but at the time this was written, 40 years old. She's married, had 3 daughters, lives in Houston. She's still 4'9", maybe shorter. 4'9". Weighs 95 pounds. Works out about 45 minutes a day a week in an elliptical trainer. But here's what Mary Lou Retton said about herself in an article printed in the Denver Post in 2008. So she's a little older now. She said, I'm a work in progress like any other 40-year-old working mother and wife. I want you to get this, folks. I don't care what your age is. I don't care what it is. The bottom line is, we are a work in progress. God is not done with us, and when He gets done with us, I was thinking about one of the ladies over at the rest home. I'd come over to sing. She said, well, I'm still here. God isn't done with my mansion yet. When He gets it done, I'm going to go home. That was her thing. I want you to understand this. We're a work in progress, and like I think Johnny Cash sang a song, when I'm old enough to really live, I'll be old enough to die. When God has guided us through and kept us and strengthened us and built us and made us into what He wants, then He brings us home. That's worth thinking of, isn't it?
Amen.
A work in progress. I want you to get this because she doesn't live. How many of you, now think about it, don't raise your hand, but how many of you have lived in your past? You dwell on, you go back over and over again over your past. You go back on it. Mary Lou did not live in her past. She didn't hop off the potter's wheel when she won the Olympic gold either and said, I'm done, I'm finished. Right? Oh, look at this! Now, I will say this, before Fonz did the thing like this, whoa, you know, with his hair, I did that, okay? Before Fonz went, I did that. Thanks. Now, he didn't get it from me, but I was that cool, I'm just saying, you know. But I didn't jump off the cart when I thought I was cool and awesome and say, he's done with me now, I am so good. I probably never had that in my head. What I got out of this story was Mary Lou stayed on the wheel, and she's not who she was then. Not one of us. How many of you remember college? Roger, you remember college, don't you?
Barely.
Richard and Roger went to Mid-America. And I went to Southern Nazarene University, the Bethany Nazarene College. And there are some things I remember about it, but when I look at these pictures, here is a skinny kid, and I had glasses, didn't look much different than these silly glasses I have on today. And my hair was very short, and I thought, oh my goodness. But I've grown into, you know, who I am today. Now, it's taken a couple of years to get there, but I'm still not where I need to be. We're not where we want to be. So get this, write this down if you're taking notes. Our past experiences can be a source of satisfaction, but they can't reflect reality today. You understand, we're better today than we were yesterday. How many of you look back in your repertoire of things you've accomplished or not accomplished and go, man, if I had that to do over again, I'd do it differently?
Amen.
You wouldn't. Is that okay to say that? You wouldn't. Faced with the same situations we have, if you were dumped back in the same box, even knowing what you know, if you're dumped back in the same box, for the most part, you would do the same thing with those same environment situations around you. Doesn't that make you feel good? Thanks a lot, Pastor. I didn't want to hear that. Paul simply says this, I've got plenty to boast about. And I'd be no fool in doing it because I'd be telling the truth. But I won't because I don't want people to think more highly of me than what they can actually see in my life and messages. I want them to see the real Paul who's been converted. I did all these things. He was known throughout the land when he was persecuting Christians. He was known in the educational areas because he was a member of the Sanhedrin. He was high up in Judaism. He was one of the elite. He would be in the book, the book of Who's Who, the Who book of Who, those Who books, you know. He'd have been in there. I've had people send me, you know, they send you these advertisements. Have you been in the Who's book? And I'm going, who? I'm never going to be in one of those books, just so you know. I'm not going to have a building named after me. There's not going to be a Bittner Avenue named after me. All there's going to be is people are going to say, he told really great jokes. And he had a lot of kids. And that's about it. There'll be a couple other things, hopefully. So what Paul is saying, and we're going to look at a couple of insights. But one, what has been cannot be denied. Truth is truth. And so some of the things in our past cannot be repaired or changed. Is that okay? Yes. Should you dwell on it? No. 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 What has been good is good for getting and putting up on a pedestal, but all that does is ruins the person that we're stuck on a pedestal. Paul says what has been may disguise what is. And then he said weakness and inadequacy. Because I'll tell you something, people hide they hide some of those things, don't they? Who we are out in public may not be the person we are when we're sitting at the table drinking a cup of coffee or thinking about the day. Paul had a pedigree. I just want you to understand that. He had a pedigree. And in the previous chapter, Paul highlighted his life. He said, they say they are Hebrews, so am I. They say they are Israelites, so am I. They say they are descendants of Abraham, so am I. They say they serve Christ, and so do I. In fact, I serve Christ more. Is he bragging on himself? No, he just laid it out. This is what it is. That was chapter 11 of 2 Corinthians 22 and 23, if you want to go back and read a little bit of that. His life, now listen to what he said. His life experience. I have worked harder, been put in jail more often, received more lashes than I can count, faced death again and again, been shipwrecked, lost at sea, beaten with stone, faced danger, lived with weariness, been hungry, thirsty, and cold, and in addition to all of that, I worry about the churches all the time.
My Lord.
I have not been shipwrecked, but I have been on a stormy lake. I tell people there are days, though, when my life is like riding it. You know, how many of you know what an English racing bicycle is? An English racer has a little bitty tires, 10 speed or however many speeds they have on it. So there are days I feel like I'm going down a very steep hill on an English racer. I'm not on a road, I'm on the railroad tracks. I'm not on the rail, I'm in the middle going, and I'm hanging on for dear life, hoping I make it to the bottom without getting hurt. Life gets crazy sometimes, folks.
Sometimes it is.
And no matter what we accomplish, there are days where we think, man, I've gone through all this weird stuff. What for? Maybe we're helping others and we're not even aware of it. So Paul was concerned. Now here's what he was concerned about. He could feel pretty good about himself. He really could, because he'd done some great things with his life. And then he met Jesus. I want to tell you something. When he said, everything I have in my life, I count but dung, or trash, or garbage compared to the unsearchable riches in Christ Jesus. When I met Jesus, all the things that were important to me stopped being important because I followed the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and I'm going to want to gain Him in life, and I want to gain Him in death. I want to gain Him in the resurrection. I want to have Jesus. I want to have Jesus. That was his goal.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
And so he told his story, and he could have easily said, look how good I am. But if you listen to Paul's conversation, he said, I've done all these things, but I count them as rubble compared to what I found in Jesus Christ. And so Paul was concerned that people could slide him up on a pedestal. He wanted to make sure they knew that's not where he belonged. Now, it's a sad thing to be unworthy, an unworthy occupant of a pedestal. I was thinking, there's a 2nd century statesman. His name was Cato the Elder. And he said, after I'm dead, I'd rather have people ask why I have no monument than why I have one. There's a lot of people who they made statues of that probably shouldn't have. Is that all right to say? In the 2000 Olympics, Mario Jones won 3 gold medals, the 100-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, and the 4x400-meter relay. She won 2 bronze medals, She was the first woman to win 5 medals in a single Olympic Games in Sydney, Australia, and she hoped to compete at 2008. I don't know if she ever made that one, but she was the Olympic golden girl. Oh, but in all this stuff, they found out she had taken steroids. Did that help her win? No. You know what happens? She had to forfeit every one of her medals. And to this day, she'll be known as one who cheated and took steroids. Now, who gave her steroids? I mean, there's probably other people responsible for some of that story too. But the bottom line is, she was a great athlete. There's no denying she had past achievements, but it did not help her in her day-by-day thing. Her present reality, Marion Jones received 6 months for perjury for telling untruth. Isn't that sad? So understand, what has been can't be denied. What is or has been is good for getting put on a pedestal, but I don't think we need pedestals, do we? Unless you can't get into a car or something, then you need a pedestal to climb up a couple steps. Whatever our life's about, here's what our life should be about. How we live, our investment in church, homes, businesses, education, all these things will impact us, but the bottom line is, the truth is this, that the past is important, but that's history. We need to be who we are today. I was thinking about Elvis Presley. I like Elvis Presley singing, and everybody calls him the king. But you know what we don't do? We should not be idolizing him. He's dead. You hear me? His accomplishments still are around, but he's dead. And the sad thing is, he didn't accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. He was trapped in the prison of success. So God says His power works best how? In our weakness. God's power is greater when we are weak. Don't you like that? No, I don't like that. Do you like that? Now, I'm glad that He uses our weakness, but I don't like the idea of thinking, man, I can't do that. That's part of the independent guy, you know. Hey, I can do this. I'm the guy, you know. No. But God says His power is best in our weakness. God works best how? In our weakness. Yeah, I'm repeating this because I want you to get this. And so if we're puffed up, that is a hindrance to our walk with God. Amen. Paul says this. He said, even though I received wonderful revelation from God to keep me from getting puffed up, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from getting proud. So if y'all have a thorn in flesh, now I'm not talking about spouses or anything like that now. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Because I've heard people say, especially guys, some of them, oh man. Pride is an obstacle. Pride will damage the ability for God to use our clay in His hands. Amen? Pride makes us want to shape ourselves in the image of our own making, not what God wants to make us. Is that good? Pride makes us feel like we have the power and can use the power, and we're entitled to do so. You listen to anything on Facebook, you watch TV, and you find there are people out there, most of them think they're empowered to do something, and they're really doing nothing. Making a lot of noise. Pride makes us feel that way. Whenever anyone is prideful, the person's relying on them and not God. Important to keep that in mind. One of the great consequences to pride and self-sufficiency is we're limited to our own resources. And I want to remind you of a guy named Gideon who was in a wine press thrashing grain down there, hiding from the Philistines. And he's thrashing grain, and he's got it in his hair, and it's in his beard, and he's dusty, and he's got his nose is running because he has allergies to the grain dust, and he's a mess. And while he's there, the angel of God comes and says, "Greetings, mighty man of valor." And Gideon, no doubt, goes, "Excuse me? Who are you talking to?" God took a man who was hiding from the enemy and said, "You're a mighty man of valor. I got a plan for you." And Gideon goes, "Really? Can you see me here? You know what I'm doing? Hiding from the enemy, threshing grain." hoping to get enough to take home and feed my family. God says, I got a plan for you through the angel. Here's what I want to do, Gideon. I want you to get the word out because I'm going to make a great army and we're going to conquer those bad guys. And so he puts the word out, and lots of people gathered around. And slowly through this story, God takes and gets rid of a whole bunch of them. Those who are afraid, go home. If you're afraid, go home. And he gets them down to a group of people, and he says, have them drink, and then I'll tell you which one's to keep. And the one that just stuck their faces in the water and drank, he said, tell them to go home. We don't need them. We need one who are aware. He ends up with an army of 300 guys. 300. And God used them to conquer the enemy. I just want you to get this. God and us is the majority. Amen? Amen. Time Magazine had an article on the last page they ran. It says why they run hint. Not because they're humble or desperate to reform health care. These are politicians. They run because they want to find position. And they're hoping that they might get to be president someday, or some great place where they'll find. That sounds like today too, doesn't it? That was quite a while ago. Pride can get a person the presidency of the United States of America. Pride can get you a gold medal. Pride can get a person a trophy husband or a trophy wife. You know what trophy husbands or wives? Y'all know? I've never been around that kind of stuff. So that one didn't kind of fit me. But anyway, although I have a trophy wife. Right, because there's only one in the whole wide world that could be like Judy. And pride can win beauty pageants, talent contests, can earn promotions. Pride can motivate a person to excel in nearly all the pursuits, but God doesn't have a use for prideful people. Because a prideful person isn't interested in being clay in the potter's hands. The whole goal, folks, is that we are clay in God's hands, and God can use us and make us into whatever kind of vessel that He likes, that He can use for building kingdom. Amen. So it's not about seeing the need to depend on God or submit to the will. It's about, God, here it is. I'm here. Can you use me? Is there anything in my life you can use? Because you know when you look in the mirror, you don't see what God can use. You don't see what God can see. God took a shoe salesman and made a great evangelist out of him, and he was selling shoes. You understand? God can take all of us and do great things with us if we would just let Him have control of our life. Amen. Now, Paul seems to be saying, if he hadn't gotten a thorn in the flesh, he might have succumbed to the pride. I had all these things. I had it all. But God brought a thorn in my flesh to keep me humble. So if you have a thorn in your flesh, sigh. Okay, Lord, if it's going to be there. You ask Him to take it out. If He doesn't take it out, then you say, thank you, Lord, for giving that to me to keep me on balance so I can depend on you. Amen? Amen. The third thing here, God's power works best when we're weak. That's the key. Paul says three different times, I beg. He didn't just say, well, Lord, hey, it'd be really nice if you do this. The Bible says he begged God 3 times to take away the thorn in my flesh. And each time he begged God, please, Lord, hear me. Do this for me. Please, I'm begging you. God says, my grace is sufficient for you. Amen. My power works best in your weakness. Thanks a lot, Lord. Wow. Have you ever, well, okay, if that's how you insist. It's not a new concept. We got a guy named Moses. Remember Moses? Yes. Moses' life was quite a unique life. I mean, God saved him. They were killing the male babies. And Moses' mom, and by God's direction, puts him in a little basket covered with pitch tar and puts him out in the water where Pharaoh's daughter bathes, and they're crocodilian out there. There's crocodiles out there, folks. Either he was going to get found and saved or devoured. And God took him. His name Moses meant called out or pulled out. He gets called to lead the children of Israel. He knew early day on God had him. By the way, he got to go back home and his mama raised him until he was old enough to wean. Then Pharaoh's daughter educated him. He was well educated. He had everything going for him to be a success. Till one day he saw the soldiers being cruel to one of the Jews, and he killed him. Hid his body in the sand, and then the Jews started making fun of him, and he ran away. 40 years he wanders there taking care of sheep for a father-in-law. And one day out in the desert, minding his own business, herding sheep, he notices a bush that's on fire. The Bible said when he noticed the bush, he said, I'm going to check this out. I'm going to go see why this bush is burning and not being consumed. And I got goose pimples thinking about this. And he walks up to the burning bush, and the voice from the bush says, take off your sandals, you are on holy ground.
Hallelujah.
Moses, the man who'd been hiding out, who had run away, who had failed miserably, there was no hope or promise for him, is standing before a burning bush in a desert with a bunch of dumb sheep. And God speaking to him out of the bush. And God said, I've called you, Moses. And I want you to lead my children from Egypt. And I want you to go talk to Pharaoh. And you know what Moses said? I want you to get this, because there are different ways we play this story, but he said, who am I? I hear it as a humble man. Who am I that I could go before Pharaoh and lead it? Look at my life. Look at my failures. Look at how bad it's been. Look at me. I'm out here taking care of sheep. God said, I chose you. Then he said something I thought was really cute. Moses has a stick in his hand. He goes, what's in your hand? Remember this story?
Yes.
Throw it on the ground. And it turns into an adder or an asp or one of those great, poison, ugly, bad snakes. Listen, if God said, Mike Bittner, pick up, I don't pick up snakes, okay? I've only picked up one snake. God said, pick it up by, get this, by the tail. And it turns back into the staff. I want you to get this. When God can take whatever's in your hand if you're willing to be the clay that He wants to use. Who am I? Moses said. Who am I? How do you expect me to lead? They're not going to believe me. They remember who I am. I don't speak good. Send someone else, Lord. Please. You know what God said? Hey, you got a brother. His name is Aaron. Remember him? He became the priest. You got a brother. I'm going to use him to talk. You tell him what to say. He'll speak for you. Oh, great. You got a sister. She'll come along with you too. They'll help you out. It's a family deal. People complain. How come they get to do all this stuff? I don't know. But what I get out of the story is I see Moses. I'm worthy. I'm worthy. I'm unworthy. I'm weak, Lord.
Lord Jesus.
And I want you to get this. God does not disqualify your weakness. He uses it if you let Him.
Yes.
God can work with unworthy. He can work with weak. He can work with flawed. He can work with humble.
Thank you, Jesus.
God can't work with proud or unwilling people. Did you get that? There's a difference there. And when Moses is talking to God, and over again, when you read Moses' story and Joshua's story, God says over and over again, don't be afraid, I will be with you.
Amen.
I'll be with you. I'll walk with you. I will carry you. It's going to be okay. I've got you.
Thank you, Lord.
1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 and 28, Paul teaches about the wisdom of God. And here's what he writes. This foolish plan of God is wiser than the wisest of human plans. And God's weakness is stronger than the greatest of human strength. Remember that a few of you were wise in the world's eyes, or powerful, or wealthy when God called you. Instead, God deliberately chose the things the world considers foolish to shame those who think they're wise. And He chose the things that are powerless to shame those who are powerful. And He chose the things that are despised to use them to bring nothing that which the world considers important, so that no one can ever boast in the presence of God. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 25 to 29. The whole history of Israel was an example of God's exploits with them. And I want you to get this, because if we're like them, over and over again, Israel would be brought out of the miry clay. He had taken out of slavery. All these great things that happened to them after they were in bad times. God help us. And then they would fall back and fall back and fall back. You look at America today, we've fallen back, and fallen back. The whole history of Israel was a picture of that. You know, anyone remember the 6-Day War? You know what I'm talking about? It was in 1967. Some of you are so young, you don't remember 1967. I do. And the 6-Day War stunned the powers of the Middle East as evidence that the weakness of God always triumphs and trumps the power of man. Don't you like that one? So this story was where the Jews used taxi cabs with no mufflers to drive across the desert, and the Egyptians, who had all the armament, jumped. Listen, they jumped out of their vehicles and ran away, leaving their guns and armament, tanks, and all this stuff, left it sitting. And that's how Israel got armed. Taxi cab with no mufflers. Because the enemy thought that what they were hearing was lots and lots of tanks coming after them, and they ran away. Isn't that amazing? Who would have thought a tiny little woman born in Albania would become the single most widely admired person in the country? In 1999, she was voted the most admired person of the 20th century. You know who that is? This little woman started a mission order in 1951 in the city of Calcutta, and spent 40 years to be 4,000 sisters strong, and had a brotherhood of 300 million lay volunteers and 600 missions in 123 countries.
Wow.
You know who I'm talking about? Huh?
Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa, yes. Mother Teresa.
Wow.
Who would talk to anyone. Who never got high and puffed up, and yet God used her in such a phenomenal way. And how about a guy named Billy Graham? You know he was born on a dairy farm in North Carolina? You know he turned down a membership in a local youth group because he was deemed too worldly. They wouldn't let him. He wouldn't let him in the youth group because he was too worldly. And he attended what we now know as Bob Jones University. He attended only one semester because it was too legalistic. It was too legalistic in coursework and rules. And Bob Jones Sr., the top dog at this school, said to Billy Graham, are you ready for this? At best, all you could amount to would be a poor country Baptist preacher somewhere in the sticks.
Wow.
That was in 1937.
Wow.
He was engaged to a classmate who broke off their engagement because she felt he didn't have enough religious purpose.
Wow.
Ruth showed it. And yet he is listed among 7th of the most admired persons in the 20th century. Preached in person to more people in the world than anyone who's ever lived. In 1993, that's a long time ago, 2.5 million people had received Christ through his ministry.
Hallelujah.
I'm one of them.
Thank you, Jesus.
This guy who'd never be anything more than a country bumpkin preacher out in the sticks became this great man. Isn't that crazy? You know why? Because he was willing to be used. Here's another one. Among the unlikely that God has used in interesting ways is a lady named Joni Eareckson Tada. Paralyzed by a diving accident in 1967, she's impacted for good and God in ways that would never otherwise be possible, and even today has to be dressed and helped through her day. She's written 35 books, maybe more than that by now, and has a Joni and Friends ministry. She's traveled 41 countries. She's one of the most sought-after convention speakers, and she paints. And she holds the brush in her mouth.
Amen.
Wow.
Clay, folks, clay. Do you think Joni, as Paul did, ever said to God, please take away my paralysis? You know she did. Do you ever think she ever struggles with being a jar of clay because she's so fragile? One of my favorite stories, is of her being surrounded by a group of women in a restroom at a conference. And one lady remarked, as all others nodded in agreement, "Joni, you always look so together, so happy in your wheelchair. I wish I had your joy. How do you do it?" She said, "I don't. After my husband leaves for work at 6 a.m., I'm alone until I hear the front door at 7. That's when a friend arrives to get me up. While I listen to her make coffee, I pray, 'Oh Lord, my friend's going to give me a bath, get me dressed, sit me over my chair, and brush my teeth and my hair, and send me out the door. And I don't have the strength to do it one more time. I have no resources. I don't have a smile, but you do.
Hallelujah.
May I have yours?
Oh,
God, I need you, and I need you desperately." And when my friend comes through the bedroom door, I turn my head toward her and give her a smile. Sent it straight from heaven. It's not mine. It's God's.
Hallelujah.
So she said, gesturing toward her paralyzed legs, "Whatever joy you see this morning was hard won earlier today." She wrote in her book of that incident, "I've learned that the weaker we are, the more we need to lean on God. And the more we lean on God, the stronger we discover Him to be."
Amen.
amen.
So what does it mean for jars of clay like us? People in whom God lives, for whom and through God cares for, to whom God gives strength and power, and some days a smile when we don't have one. What does it mean to be a faith community where God lives in us and through us, and we care because God cares, and we smile because He smiles through us, and we have joy not because we mustered it up, because He gave us joy,
Oh, Lord
because
Jesus.
we asked Him to touch us.
Thank you,
Thank
Jesus.
you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, Lord.
To be a faith community in whom God lives, it means that whatever we have been or done as individuals, as a faith community, is history now, all in memory. Our days of the past failure or glory are in the books. They're a matter of record, and the bottom line is this, that folks, what we're moving for is what we're going to do today and tomorrow. Our culture lives on things in sequels. Anyone remember the name of the lady who did Hattie Potter? 1997, this lady, her name is J.K. Rowling, in case you don't know, published her first Harry Potter book in 97. You didn't know it was around that long, did you? Her readers lived in anticipation of each publication until I think she finally said, "Okay, I've had enough of these," but anyway, or she's made enough money. Next, she just kept writing. I don't know how many books she wrote or how many movies have been made for this. Another one was a novelist named Harry Ludham, written the Bourne trilogy. Ever Bourne? It's amazing if you like spy flicks. Bourne Identity, The Bourne Supremacy, The Bourne Ultimatum. James Bourne will be back because they're going to keep writing them. But if you've ever seen, those movies are great. If you like fast-moving action craziness, that's pretty good. Anyway, but again, who comes after James Bourne? Only time will tell. But I'm just saying, there are people that do these great things. They weren't great people. They just were used. Now, I'm not saying God used them, but I'm just saying, if they could be used, what could God do with you?
Come on, Pastor.
That little bit of clay. What could He do with you?
Amen.
What does God have in mind for each of us today? What does He have in mind for this church in the days and months ahead, or the years that stretch out ahead? I'm on the last part of my hourglass. You know that, right? Because I've lived most of my life. It's not been a bad life. But I'm saying, when I say years ahead, I'm planning on years ahead, okay? Is that all right with you?
Amen.
But you have to ask the question, what will unfold the sequel in our lives, the story of our lives?
Yes.
What are people going to talk about in our lives? How
Yes,
God has taken
Pastor.
that little piece of clay and done something great with us?
Yes.
Amen.
I don't know how the story story's going to play out, but I hope that it's a story of how God uses ordinary, everyday, average people like us, jar clay people, and makes something of us, a jar clay church.
Amen.
Back in the day, I think Tasha probably has our hutch now, but we had a China hutch. Judy had all her special knick-knack paddywhacks and all those special things in that thing. And everyday things we didn't use. Those were special occasion dishes. By the way, you know what? Maybe we ought to get out the good china once, what do you think?
You should.
I don't know about you, but we eat on paper plates.
Okay.
That's right.
Amen.
Why dirty a good dish when you can?
Amen.
And I have a dishwasher too, and it's me. No, it's no, not all the time, but a lot of times I'll hand wash the dishes before I put them in the dishwasher. We have a nice dishwasher, but the whole point is that we use it on rare occasions. We're afraid to chip it or break it. Or, hey, wait a minute, we ought to. I think what we ought to do is have chipped dishes like that put away and say this is our good china, because people want to know that it really was used and it wasn't just something pretty ornamental sitting there. We've seen examples of other things too. Grandfather clocks sitting there not working because they don't work. You know, I want you to understand this. I want you to write this down. We were never meant to be china cabinet people. Our church was never meant to be a china cabinet church, where precious pieces are safely stowed away out of harm's way. Brian Wilkerson said the church is more like a working kitchen, and we're more like well-worn earthen vessels and jars of clay that are filled again and again and again with the life and love of Christ, then poured out to a hungry and thirsty world. That's who we're to be.
Amen. Amen.
So the question, I guess, today,
Help us, Lord.
are we going to let God use us? We have to be weak in order to be strong. Isn't that cool? That's kind of a weird philosophy in a way. But Paul said, I know it's for Christ's good. I'm quite content with my weakness. When I'm weak, then I'm strong. 2 Corinthians 12:10. So the best way clay pots can do is to begin each day with prayer. Lord, you know who I am. As Joni said, Lord, I don't have the strength to face this routine one more time. I don't have any resources. I don't have a smile. But you do.
My Lord.
May I have your smile? God, I need you desperately. And then we turn our face toward the world and we give it a smile. And the smile, folks, once you get this, comes straight from heaven, not from us. And their lives will be changed not because we were so good, but because God touched us just enough.
Yes.
Most important thing clay pots must remember is that the weaker we are, the more we need to lean on our potter.
Amen.
The more we need to lean on the Lord. And the stronger we discover Him to be, the more useful every day we will be. Don't you like that?
Amen.
Now, by the way, I want to tell you something. With all these clay pots, there's a few crackpots in there. I just could not get past that. You know, I had to say that. So here's what I want to do. We're going to close. And I don't know, Helen, if you can find just as I am, that would be maybe that would be fitting. God, you think one more time you could give me a spot?
Lord Jesus. Lord Jesus.
One more time, could you give me a song?
Yes, Lord.
The kind of song Paul and Silas sang at midnight. Lord, could you build me up when I can't get up anymore? Could you give me the strength to take one more step? Go one more mile? Sing one more song? Touch one more life? Could you do that for me today? And as we conclude, I just want to invite you, if you want to come and pray at the altar, you're welcome to come. If you're at home and you want to pray, I want to challenge you folks that you can't do it on your own. It's in your weakness that He can use you. A smile, Lord. A song. A step. a hug, a cup of cold water to those who are parched and dry.
Yes, Lord Jesus.
Father, we bow before you today. We're in awe that in our midst you would come. And Lord, today we just need another smile. We need a smile that doesn't come from us but comes from you. We need compassion in our hearts that can get us past our humility and our thinking we can't do it. We need the strength to get through it. We think, Lord, of all the times that we've kind of backed down because we didn't think we can handle this thing. You said, I've got this. So we need your smile, Lord. We need your strength, Father. We need the joy that emanates from you through us. One more time, Lord, use us as a vessel. And we understand our frailness, so we rely on you for strength. And Father, would you forgive us for doubting you?
Please, Lord Jesus.
Or giving up too easy because we didn't think it was worth it or we could do it? If there's sin involved in our lives, would you forgive us? Cleanse us. Make us new. Give us that power that Paul had when he met you, that he couldn't contain himself anymore. Give us joy that bubbles out of us and we can't hold it in. And help us, Lord, to be change agents for your kingdom. This will give you praise and honor and glory. Amen. Well, we're not done, but the service is over. See, I think maybe it might be worthwhile just do a little reflecting today. It wouldn't hurt to say, God, I need a better smile. It wouldn't. It wouldn't hurt to say, Lord, I can't do this stuff, but you spoke to me this morning, and I think with your help I can. I think. One more footstep. One more smile. One more kind word. So put your hands up like this. May the God who calls you fulfill his plan in your life. And as he spins you on that wheel, may he make you into what is pleasing to him. I love you. I'm glad you joined us. Glad you all came in today. May God bless you out there and use you to turn this broken world upside down. I love you. We'll see you next Sunday morning, 10 a.m. God bless you. Amen.